Hello.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, Pankaj, how are you?
Yes, sir. Fine, sir. Good morning. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for accepting an invitation, sir. Very
No
grateful
problem.
to have you.
My pleasure. So I'm audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's fine, right? Okay. So I just
We'll wait for some time. Let
we'll wait now. It's 11:45. So you tell me when you want me to. I think right now there are hardly any participants.
Yes,
So
sir. Yes.
how about the presentation? Is what you're going to share? You want me to share? How is it?
You can share, sir.
So you want me to share it right now?
Yeah. We'll do.
Or wait.
No problem.
So share screen.
मॉर्निंग
Morning, bhai. कैसे आप?
बहुत मजे में.
Okay, you can see the screen now, Pankaj bhai?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Thank you, sir.
Hi Prashant, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good sir. बहुत बिजी हो गए हो अभी वेबिनार में.
Because I took one during the week also.
अच्छा.
So that is, I had taken on a different topic. That was at WIRC. They were running the session. Okay. So one I had taken there. So that is why when you told me Saturday, I was to push it कि next week होएगा तो ठीक है. क्योंकि एक week में दो a lot of time goes in that then.
अच्छा.
And you all what every Saturday?
Now we have not every Saturday. 15 दिन में एक होता है.
Okay. So, Dilip bhai, I thought I'll start by sharing, my perspective on VSV because I was, involved extensively in terms of, interactions with the ministry. Okay. So I'll start with that just to give a precursor in the sense they will, come to know the mindset and how the ministry is looking at it. Okay.
Correct.
To start with that, then we will go on to some of the concepts. Okay. And issues will keep coming up. Yeah.
Correct.
So how many people are you expecting today?
पंकज कितने जने रजिस्टर हुए?
Registration से तो 30 members का आया है. 30 members have registered. Last time there were 50 participants. Even though they have not registered everyone, so but people just joined the last minute.
Okay.
Usually they don't register.
Okay.
So people will join. I'm sure it will cross at least 30-40.
Okay. Hi Sudhir, how are you?
Hi, Prashant. Good to listen to you now. in a different role.
Yeah, completely.
ये जाएगा मेरे ख्याल से तो 50-55 जाएगा.
Yes, sir.
Because WRC, when I was there during the week, in fact, it crossed 500.
500. Oh.
Yeah, it crossed 500.
WRC, what happens is they have a large circulation, no?
Yeah, correct. This is study circle. The WRC, the circulation is much larger.
So as a study circle, now अभी तो क्या है, WRC has placed some restrictions. So we are not saying as a study circle, but we are saying study Chembur CA study group. तो वो सब WRC वगैरह सब निकाल दिया उनका वर्ड्स. Okay, all our members are saying कि आप एक्टिविटी बंद मत करो, वेबिनार चालू करो.
Yeah, because right now everybody is, at home, working from home. So one of the best ways to keep yourself engaged is along with your work is the webinars.
Exactly. But this will now become a trend now.
Yeah.
And one good thing has happened is there is a participation has increased. It was physically, when we used to keep the meetings, so it was difficult to attend, come physically at the venue. But now, in the first webinar itself, there were almost 50 participants. So that way, that's a beneficial part. So I feel this trend will increase and participation will increase. And cost-wise also, the cost has come down.
But plus, from a convenience perspective, because otherwise physically coming down to the venues always becomes an issue. Here you just need to log on.
Correct. और क्या है, वेन्यू का कॉस्ट और खाने पीने का कॉस्ट वो भी कम हो गया.
Correct. The cost will also go down with this.
नहीं तो वो खाने का that was another project. किसी को पसंद नहीं आया तो बोलेगा ये बनाओ वो बनाओ.
This gives a lot of flexibility in terms of organizing the courses here.
And what is happening is there is a more productive time is going into this.
Yep.
For the speaker, for the members and everyone.
Plus, because everybody is at home now, so the participation one will increase. People want to focus more on this.
Correct. So what happens is speaker is allowed to speak first, and the issues जो हैं questions people they put it on chat.
Okay.
So the question is also very, very specific. And the communication is also quality.
Okay.
Communication is happening. So that way overall all the things have gone into this technology has made it very easy.
Yeah. So here what format are we following? The audience can ask questions during the presentation? I'm okay if we can whenever anybody has a question, they can raise the question at that time. So everybody is on speak mode, right?
No, Pankaj,
I will place them on guidelines. I will place everyone on mute. So after the session, we can tell them to ask you questions.
Okay.
Because it will be very convenient for you to continue without losing the link.
No, I'm okay. So if people want to pause and ask questions, I'm fine. I will leave it to you all.
Prashant, but people should see you, huh, Prashant?
So right now you can see my screen, right?
Not you. So you have the mode is there where your presentation and you can be seen. Just try that mode if it's possible.
Okay.
I guess they want to see you, like it's very convenient when the speaker is also visible.
So I have gone for.
I think I'll tell you. Go to the annotations. The screen as well as the speaker, both, if it's possible. Let's check out.
I'm just trying that. So okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
it will be better.
Better? You can see me?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
That is
Thank you,
side by
sir.
side mode.
Hmm.
You took the side by side mode. No, I think that is what works.
Yeah, that's what works.
Yeah.
So now you can see the presentation also.
Yes, sir.
But Sudhir, I can't see you.
ऐसा you want?
Because his video is he has kept इसका video off कर दिया है.
I had done it off primarily because it is difficult to have that continuous bandwidth here. वो चकलिक हो जाता है because a lot of people in my house are using the net, na.
No, I understand. No, correct. Even I generally start off and then put my video off only. But here, if you want, I can put it on.
Here, I think it makes sense because you are speaking, Prashant.
Yeah.
Hello, Pankaj, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, sir. Prashant, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you?
Yes, sir. She's Shikha Rustavi, deputy convener for our Chembu Study Circle. And we have joined
Nice to meet
this study circle as a convener just in April. So this is our second webinar.
Okay. So first one was which topic?
The first topic was on amendments.
Amendment in
Finance bill.
last
Finance bill.
Yes.
It was on last Sunday. So this after just 5 days we have arranged the second one. So we'll wait for a few minutes more, sir.
Sure.
For,
You tell me when you want me
sir.
to start. I'm okay.
Yes, sir.
तैयारी कम थोड़ा सा ये बैंड स्लो कर
So Pankaj, tell me whenever we have you want to start.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Just 5 minutes more, sir.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you, sir. Hello. 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 Yes, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you.
Yes, sir. So we will start now.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I welcome all the members to the webinar on Vivaad se Vishwas scheme. We have with us Mr. Prashant Bhojwani, who is a part of Dhruva Advisors. I would like to give a short description for Mr. Prashant Bhojwani. He is a chartered accountant with more than 15 years of experience in the field of taxation, which includes advising on Indian corporates and multinational companies, including Fortune 500. Currently, Mr. Prashant is a part of Dhruva Advisors. Prior to this, he was a director with Deloitte and EY. Mr. Prashant has worked across direct tax specializations, corporate tax, international tax, personal tax, transfer pricing, transaction tax, besides foreign direct investment policy and exchange control regulation. This also includes advising clients on investment structuring, both inbound and outbound, corporate restructuring, cross-border transactions, succession planning, business model optimization, compliance, and litigation. Mr. Prashant Sir has authored several articles featuring in journals, publications, print and digital media, and has also been a speaker at various conference events on tax, media, and entertainment sector related topics. At present, Prashant Sir has been appointed to the National Committee on Media and Entertainment of the Confederation of Indian Industry from 2015 to 2019. With this short description, I would request Prashant Sir to take over and guide us, enlighten us on Vivaad se Vishwas. Welcome, sir, once again, sir. Hello. Hello.
Thanks, Pankaj, for the introduction.
Thank you. Welcome.
Wishing everybody a very good afternoon for the opportunity to engage with you on Vivaad se Vishwas. Okay. So, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Everybody can view the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, before we deep dive into the provisions for Vivaad se Vishwas, I thought it would be a good idea to just share my perspective in terms of the interactions which we've been having with the ministry right from the stage when the bill was introduced and with the amendments which have moved till date, the representations which have been made. This will give some sort of a perspective in terms of how the government is looking at it. Okay. Pankaj,
Yes,
I'm not able to change the slides for some reason. You can do it at the back end?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pankaj, you can hear me?
Sir, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll do it. Yes, sir.
I'm not able to move the slides. Can you change? Okay. Thank you. So I was talking about the representations made that will throw some perspective in terms of how the government is really looking at it. Okay. Now, if we see the first bill which was introduced and the current provisions of the Vivaad Act, okay, there is a fair amount of changes really happened. And so in terms of the theme which really picked out is this government is looking at making this a success. They wanted to know what to be done for that. Okay, and one is they want to resolve litigation. Okay, that's the key, and they're looking at revenues as result. Okay, first bill which was largely based on the 2016 income tax transfer scheme, okay, which was again CITP level, so it was largely based on that. Now, if we had there is a fair bit of changes which are happened. I mean, which discussed with the MDs. Now, revenue is the largest lead. Okay, our case about 75-80% is the revenue. Okay. And is by taxpayers. So it was very difficult in circumstances that taxpayer will come and pay 100%. Okay. We suggested if you tweak it, make it 50%, that was the representation. At least there will be an opportunity for taxpayers to consider it. And second, if you look at the losses scenario, okay, whichever taxpayer in case if they are the additions, why would people opt for Vivaad Se Vishwas scheme? Okay. Third piece was the formula of disputed tax. Originally, the formula was essentially borrowed from the provisions. Okay. And there was a possibility in certain cases there could be, the way in which it is calculated, a double whammy, so as to say. Okay. Third thing is even that formula has been changed. Okay, all these things are in favor of the taxpayer. Now, first, slide 2 essentially just gives a perspective in terms of the huge litigation which is pending in India, and hence the government's effort really to resolve. Some of the past measures which have been taken go back right to 1998, where Kar Vivaad Samadhan scheme was launched. 2016, the direct tax dispute resolution scheme, which I spoke about, and the first bill essentially was a mirror of this to a large extent. Okay, and last year the indirect tax scheme was also launched. This really maps, slide 4 is just giving a mapping of the events on how it started. With 1st February, the announcement was made in terms of the Vivaad Se Vishwas scheme in the budget. Thereafter, it was introduced in the parliament. Based on representations, the amendments were moved to the bill. Post that, CBDT also issued FAQs. Finally, the Vivaad Se Vishwas has been enacted and the rules have been notified. Now, the first thing, okay, is really who is eligible and which are the cases which can be covered. Okay, so here it is only income tax cases which can really be covered, and who is eligible. So an appeal, writ or SLP, which is filed by the taxpayer or the department or both, and is currently pending as on 31st Jan 2020. Okay, that's the first basket. The second basket is where the appeal is filed, the order is passed. However, the time limit to file the appeal has not expired. Okay, that's the second basket. The third basket is cases related to DRP. So originally, DRP was not really covered in the original bill, but there was no reason really to leave DRP out. Okay, and cases related to DRP have also been covered. Okay, so cases wherein objections have been filed by the filed before the DRP, and the DRP has not issued the directions. That's the first leg. The second leg is where DRP has issued its directions, but the AO has not passed the consequent order. That is also covered. Now there's a third limb also, which is also covered, and that is coming out from the FAQ, is where...
sorry, sir. Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yeah.
So you can...
Hello?
Hello. Yes, sir. So can you see the slide which I'm sharing?
No, I can't see the slide which you're sharing. Sorry, you're on slide 5, right? Hello?
Yes, sir. Current now I'm on
Slide
5.
5. Yeah, slide 5.
So please guide me when to change the slide.
When to change the slide? I think I'm able to change it now. So if I require you to do it, then I'll tell you.
Can you share screen? Because I have
I've done the share screen. You are able to view the slides, no?
We can only see you giving us the webinar. We can't see the slide accessed by user.
So Prashant, I think it only show the slides rather than you may have your video off. That will make sense.
You can see the screen now.
No, sir. Previously, I was sharing the slides, but it was not in sync with the with sir. So that is why I guess there was a confusion. Hello, hello, Prashant sir. Hello, Prashant sir. Hello, yes sir. Hello, yes sir. Hello, yes sir. Yes sir, we can see now.
You can see now, right?
Yes sir.
Okay. So I'll proceed.
Yes sir. Sorry for the technical error, everyone. Really sorry.
Hey, no problem, no problem. Okay. So we are on slide 5 right now. Okay.
Yes sir.
And third limb, so we are on DRP. So DRP, we discussed the first 2 points. There's a third limb also, where the draft order has been issued. Okay. But the assessee has not filed objections before the DRP. The essentially basically wants to go to the CIT appeal. Hence, it is waiting for the final order to be issued by the assessing officer. That third limb is also covered. Okay. Then that's clearly coming out in the FAQs. Now, application under 264, the revision application. That's the next part. And lastly, wherever there are any cases under arbitration, conciliation, or mediation. Okay. Now the cases which are covered, just to give you a few illustrative examples, search and seizure where the disputed tax is less than 5 crores. 5 crore threshold is per year. Okay. Now, in case if there are cross appeals filed, there's an assessee appeal as well as a department appeal, such cases are covered. There is an option for the assessee to opt for either of the appeals or only for one appeal also. Now, disputed interest, penalty, fee, that is also covered. Cases related to TDS, TCS are also covered. Okay. Now, set aside assessments at times poses a practical challenge really in terms of computing the disputed tax. Okay, but in principle, as long as it is not cancelling the entire assessment and making a fresh assessment is also covered. Okay. Now, we may have the assessment for a particular year where a regular assessment has happened under 143.3, and thereafter for the same year, a reassessment has happened. Okay, so such cases are also covered. The taxpayer can opt for the scheme for either of the two assessments, or even for both the assessments. Now, one important thing to be noted is that the taxpayer has to take a decision whether to opt for a particular appeal or no. The option to settle issues within an appeal is not there. So, for example, if there are, let's say, 3 issues within an appeal, the taxpayer has to opt for resolving all 3 issues. Cannot inter se choose that I can will go for 2 issues and not go for 1. So once the option is being exercised, it has to be all the issues within a particular appeal. So what the taxpayer has to decide is which appeal he has to go for. Okay. Now, for the same year, as I said, there could be multiple appeals. Okay. Now, taxpayer can decide within the same year which appeal to go for. For example, there could be a departmental appeal, there could be an SSC appeal, okay, if it is at tribunal level. Second, there could be a appeal against a regular assessment order as well as a reassessment order within the same year. So the taxpayer has the option to decide which appeal to go for. Now, there are certain cases which are not eligible. Okay, one where for search the disputed tax exceeds 5 crore for a particular assessment year. Cases relating to undisclosed foreign income or assets. Okay, assessments done basis information received from overseas authorities. These are the cases which are not covered. Okay. Now, there are also certain taxpayers who are debarred. They cannot opt for VSV. Okay, so please note, first case is there are tax areas which is basically a particular case where the taxpayer cannot opt for it. Okay, for example, if we look at on the left side, a taxpayer can opt for maybe 1 year but not for another year. For example, in search, if he has about 5 years, where 2 years it exceeds 5 crores, he cannot opt for those years, but the other years he can opt for. Okay, the second bracket is where the taxpayer itself is debarred, he cannot opt for it, so for any year. Okay, but I have not put all the illustrations down. So one case is where there is a prosecution for any offense which is punishable under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So if that happens, the taxpayer cannot opt for VSV for any year. Now, continuing on cases which are not covered by VSV, if the assessments are pending as on 31st of January, such cases are not covered. Okay, because hello, yeah.
Sorry, sir. Sorry for interrupting, sir.
No.
The slides are not moving actually, sir.
Slides are not moving, but I'm able to move the slide there on my screen. It's moving. One sec, Shahid's is paused. One sec, let me share the screen again then.
Yes, sir.
You can view it now, slide 8. Pankaj, you can view the slides.
It's showing that you have started screen sharing. I guess it will just, yeah, now we can see. Yes, sir.
Now you can see, right?
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No
Sorry,
problem,
sorry,
Pankaj.
sir.
I think you'll have to turn the slides. I'll tell you when to turn the slides. Okay?
Okay, so
Because I'm
I'll
not able. Uh,
then you have to stop sharing. Then I will share it at my end.
Then do one thing. You share it because I think there is some issue out here. When I take control of the slides, then you are not able to view it.
Okay, okay. So you can stop sharing. I'll share it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we are on slide 8.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So
Members
cases
can
which are
see.
not.
I just ask them. So just a second. So I'll ask the members. Please
Sure.
reply on the chat screen. Members, if you can see the slide page number 8. Page number 8. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The case. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
We'll
you, sir.
move on.
Continue, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So assessments which are pending on 31st of January are not covered because per se there is no appeal as on that date. That's one. Cases before settlement commission, advance ruling. Now there is certain on certain situations an advance ruling is covered. For example, if the advance ruling has done the computation of the taxable income, they basically decided what is the taxable income, and there is a further proceeding at the High Court. So in that limited case, uh, a taxpayer can even opt for the advance ruling. Okay. Now, having spoken of the advance ruling, there is one very interesting issue. Okay. Uh, Suppose the advance ruling has decided, has determined the taxable income. Okay. They've decided the issue in favor of, let's say, the taxpayer. Okay. And revenues taken this further by way of a writ to the High Court. Okay. So now the taxpayer can opt for VSV. Okay. But the interesting part is the computation of disputed tax. Because what in such a case, the disputed tax has to be computed as per the AR's order. Now, if you compute as per the AR's order, there is nothing payable for the assessee. Okay. So this I thought I'll just point out. This is an interesting observation. Next is revision order under section 263. That case is not covered, and largely the reason why a 263 is not covered because there are challenges in terms of determining the taxable income per se in such a case. Okay, because generally what happens is the matter is referred to the AO to verify and determine the income. So hence 263 is not covered. Okay. Now, as I said initially, it's only income tax. So equalization levy, any matters pending on account of wealth tax, all that is not covered. Pankaj, we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, now one point, in case if the assessee has a quantum appeal which is pending, as well as a penalty appeal which is pending for the same assessment here, okay, uh, the assessee does not have the option to resolve the penalty appeal and continue to litigate in terms of the quantum appeal. So that option is not available. However, what the assessee can do is once he resolves the quantum appeal, okay, under VSV, the penalty appeal is automatically the penalty is automatically waived off. Okay. Now we come to the second part, which is computation of disputed tax. Okay. The first part was who was eligible, which are the cases which are eligible, which are the taxpayers which are not eligible. Okay. Now the second part is the computation of disputed tax. Okay. So where an appeal is pending before any appellate forum, it is the tax payable if such appeal was decided against the taxpayer. So let's say, for example, if the assessment order, the income was computed as 100. Okay, the assessee filed an appeal before the CIT appeal. Say returned income was nil. Assessment order determined the income at 100. Appeal pending before CIT. So the disputed tax will be computed basis 100. Okay, that's largely the principle. Now, where the appeal is decided by the appellate forum and the time limit for filing the appeal has not expired, it will be the amount of tax payable after giving effect to such order. Okay. Where the order is passed by the assessing officer, okay, and the time limit for filing the appeal has not expired, again it will be the tax payable as per the AO's order. Now, here let's take a case of enhancement, okay, where the CIT appeal has issued a notice for enhancement. The disputed tax would be computed basis even the enhancement aspect. Okay, so for technique, if the CIT appeal has issued a notice for say enhancement of 100, then if the assessee has to resolve the matter under VSV, then they'll have to consider the entire enhancement aspect as well. Okay, Pankaj, we can move to the next slide. Now, really coming to the key aspects about the scheme, you know, how is this scheme really different from the other schemes really? Okay, the biggest differentiator, so as I would say. Now, if the tax is paid as by 30th of June, it is 100% of the disputed tax. Okay, in principle. Okay. In cases of penalty and interest, it is only 25% of the interest and penalty. Such cases, it is 125%. Okay. Now, in case if it is a revenues appeal, okay. Pankaj, next slide. Most importantly, in case if it is a revenues appeal, the department has filed an appeal, then only 50% of that amount is to be paid. Okay. Now that is the biggest relief really for the taxpayer, because if for department appeals, most of the time the taxpayers would be reluctant to move for VSV because most of the appeals are won by the taxpayers. Okay, so in case of a departmental appeal, it is only 50%. Okay. Second, where the taxpayer has got a decision in his favor, okay, on that particular issue, which is not reversed by an higher forum, again it is 50%. So in two cases, the taxpayer has to pay only 50%. One is where the department has filed an appeal, and second case is where he's got a favorable order which has not been reversed by the higher authority. So let's take for example in year one, okay, uh, the assessee got a favorable order at the tribunal level of the tribunal level. Year two, same issues pending before the CIT. If the assessee wants to opt for VSV, he'll have to pay only 50% of the disputed tax. Pankaj, we can move to the next slide. Now we come to a case where the assessee has losses. Okay, so whatever additions are done in the assessment order, even after that, the assessee is in a loss situation. Okay, so under the normal cost, anyways, the department will not garner any revenues. It's just that the losses would be reduced. Of course, penalty proceedings would be separate. But now, in this sort of a situation, there is an option which is given to the assessee. One is he can opt to pay the tax, okay, on the addition and carry forward the losses, okay. The other option is he adjusts the losses, so he will carry forward the reduced amount of losses, okay. Now this is a big relief for companies which are in loss even after the additions, because there's no going to be no cash outflow, so as to say, once the assessee opts for VSV, okay. In case if the returned loss was 200, it is return loss is reduced to say 50. The taxpayer still has losses. He can carry forward the reduced loss of 50 and close it under VSV. Penalty will also be waived. Okay. So in a loss to loss situation, I think it is where the taxpayer should look at it very closely on whether they want to resolve the matters under VSV. At times losses would have lapsed also, okay, over a period of time, or possibly they might not utilize the losses within the time frame. So in such cases, I think taxpayers should closely look at it whether they should opt for VSV. Pankaj, you can move to the next slide. Now coming to some of the key aspects. Uh, the assessee would be entitled to the refund only, okay, whatever has been paid prior to filing the declaration. Suppose the assessee has excess TDS and he is entitled to a refund, okay, that refund he will be getting as part of VSP. But if there is any further tax paid, okay, after the declaration, that amount will not be refundable to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer will not get 244A interest. Okay. Next is in case if there's a favorable decision of the Supreme Court in the assessee's case, okay, then again it will be computed considering nil the disputed tax. We can move, Pankaj, to the next slide. Now coming to TDS, we might have a case wherein there is been a default in deducting tax. So there is a 201 proceedings, okay, against which the assessee has filed an appeal. Separately, there will be a 40A disallowance, okay, which will lead to an addition, and again on account of that also the assessee has filed an appeal. Okay, so there are two appeals going on parallelly in the assessee's case for the same issue. Okay. If the assessee opts for VSV in for the 201 appeal and pays the tax, okay, as part of a consequential relief, the 40A disallowance will not happen. Okay, so under 201, the assessee resolves his case, pays the tax, disputed tax. There would be no 40A1, and accordingly, that year there would be no demand also, presuming that is the only issue. Okay. Now, in such a case, once the 201 demand is paid, basically the TDS is paid, what happens is the payee will also get a credit for the TDS. Okay, so that's an important aspect which should be noted, particularly if there are group entity transactions. Okay, what would happen is the payee will also be entitled to a TDS credit. Now coming to set aside matters. Now, set aside matters, there are a lot of practical challenges. In principle, the assessee can go for a set aside matter, okay, but if as long as the entire assessment is not cancelled and a fresh examination is called for, okay. But in terms of set aside matter, another thing which can really be evaluated now is if the order has not been passed, you should try and pursue that with the tax office and try and get the matter closed, because then even the assessee does not need to continue or opt for the VSP. So the first step ideally should be to try and close the matter at the tax office in the set aside proceeding. If that does not happen, then you'll have to consider a VSV. Pankaj, you'll move over. Which slide is this? Slide number?
16. 16.
Okay. Okay, now again some of the issues. Okay, whether the disputed tax is to be computed after granting relief of the appellate order. So let's say a case wherein 31st of January, the order was pending before the CIT appeal or the tribunal. The order was passed subsequently. Okay. Then for the purpose of computing a disputed tax, how would it work? Whether we should give effect to the order or we should take the position as on 31st January 2020. So in this case, ideally, we should give effect to the order uh, which comes subsequent to that. Now, in cases wherein rectifications are pending, okay. Now, how does the assessee really move forward? Okay, let's say example TDS credit is not granted. Okay, now you want to move for VSV. Okay, if you do not get the credit for that TDS during the in the VSV certificate, there would be a demand which you'll have to pay. Okay, there'll be consequentially a demand. So at this stage, I think the best effort should be to try and get all the rectification orders sorted at the time of VSV. Okay, because you don't want a position wherein there's a demand, because once you pay that demand, that amount will not be refunded to you. So one advice at this stage, get all the rectifications out wherever a VSV is being considered. Okay, because if the rectification order is not passed now, it will consequentially lead to a demand. Now coming to the last point, impact on non-grant of credit of prepaid taxes, which we discussed. Can Pankaj, you can move to the next slide. Now this is a very interesting example. Okay, let's say in year one, okay, the taxpayer has a favorable decision of the tribunal on certain issues. Okay, that is not reversed by the High Court or the Supreme Court. Okay, year one. Now year two, the assessee's appeal is before the tribunal. Okay, identical issue as in year one. Okay, it is the appeal is pending as on 31st of January. So in terms of eligibility, no problem. Whether the taxpayer can resolve VSV under a 50% payout, or would it have to pay 100%? Because if we see the VSV Act, okay, as far as tribunal is concerned, they talk about High Court and Supreme, but they have not brought in a situation wherein you got a favorable tribunal order, and in year two, the issue is pending before the tribunal. Now, on this point, if we see the FAQs which is issued by the CBDT, there's a very similar example, okay, wherein the matter was the DRP order was passed, okay, and the matter was before the tribunal. And in that case, okay, under the deemed appeal, the CBDT has clarified that if you have a favorable tribunal order in year one, the year two, under the deemed appeal, it would be covered by the 50% situation. Okay. So in this case, if you read the FAQ vis-a-vis along with the Act, there's a possible view to take that even in this situation, you could be covered by a 50% payout situation. Pankaj, you can move over. So next slide is essentially the procedure. The first step is really for the taxpayer to file the declaration with the designated authority. Thereafter, the designated authority will issue a certificate within 15 days, outlining what is the tax arrears. Now, in between, there's a fair amount of work which is to be done by the assessing officer. Okay, because it's the assessing officers really who are working on supporting the DA in terms of what is the desired. Okay. Thereafter, the taxpayer has to make the payment of the disputed tax and intimate the disputed tax details and the details regarding withdrawal of appeal. Lastly, after that, the DA will pass the order for the VSV. Next slide. The critical part is the declaration is presumed to have never been made if the taxpayer furnishes any false information, okay, violates any of the conditions of the act, or acts in any manner which is not in accordance with the undertaking furnished. Now, B and C is extremely broad. Okay, but what taxpayer really needs to take care of is really the information which is furnished. Okay, uh, there is no false information which is furnished. Now, there are times when the records of the taxpayer and the department is really not matching at times, because rectifications have not been done. There are times when the brought forward losses as per department and SSC is not tallying, it doesn't reconcile. Uh, you've written for adjustments of pass of certain demands against refunds, that at times is not reflected. So at the VSV stage, really, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of putting in terms of housekeeping, wherein the details are reconciled with the tax department. Okay. Now we can move over. Okay, again, one practical issue really is if the amount declared by the taxpayer is really 10 crores and the DA gives a certificate which has a higher amount. Okay, so there is no option really in such a case, to pass, to file an appeal. Okay, the only thing is what can be done is it could be rectified. So once the declaration is filed, okay, first of all, a lot of care to be taken in terms of registration, in terms of the amounts. They have to reconcile with the tax. You have to reconcile those with the tax department numbers. Okay, they have to be reconciled, because otherwise there will be a disconnect somewhere. Okay, so a lot of care needs to be taken for that, so that we don't come to a situation wherein you get a certificate for a higher amount. Next slide. Pankaj, how much time we want to keep for Q&A?
Sir, 10-15 minutes we can keep, depending on the
Okay.
queries by members.
Okay, sure. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through the next couple of slides. One is, given that the taxpayer opts for VSV, okay, it does not have any precedential value in terms of subsequent years. If you have a same issue, that will go on merits, and just because the taxpayer is opted for VSV, it will not influence the decisions. Okay. Now coming to really the benefit of VSV, one, interest and penalty are waived. Okay, prosecution, you get a immunity. Now that's the first basket. The second basket is really the 50% of the disputed tax. Okay, if it's a departmental appeal, then it's only 50% of the disputed tax. Even for covered matters, if the assessee wants to close it, it's at 50%. Next advantage is the loss to loss adjustment. In case the assessee has brought forward losses and is in a loss position, you can close it you can close the litigation without any tax payout. Okay, to that extent, you'll have to give up the losses. Another advantage is you will also get your refund slightly faster. Okay, because once you opt for VSV, if you are if there are refunds which are due, of course you will not the taxpayer will not be eligible for any interest under 244A. Okay, yeah, we can move over, Pankaj. We discussed these points largely. They're consequential. Like, we can move to the next slide. Okay, here again there's a very interesting issue in terms of MAT credit. Okay. Now we have in year one depreciation of 1000, year two 500, unabsorbed depreciation is of 1500. Okay, which of course is denied by the taxpayer. Now the by the tax authorities. Now the taxpayer intends to resolve all the issues in year two. Okay, we are currently focusing only on year two. Okay. Now whether the disputed tax would be considered with 500 or 1500. Presuming, let's say we've claimed a set off of the 1000 of year one in year two, what would be the situation? Okay. Now the second part would be there's another issue which really comes out is the MAT credit. Now presuming the taxpayer resolves the dispute and is under MAT in VSV. Okay, he resolves the dispute in VSV under MAT. Okay, now whether he'll be entitled to a MAT credit, which he can carry forward and utilize in the subsequent years. Okay, so on this point, the scheme is essentially silent. Okay, but there's no reason why the MAT credit per se should not be allowed. Okay, because once we are opting for the VSV, we are paying taxes under MAT. Okay, and as such the MAT credit should be allowable in the subsequent years. And in terms, if you opt for year two, then the year two depreciation is the number which should be considered as disputed tax, because year one the litigation will follow the normal costs. You can move over, Pankaj, next slide. Now quick thoughts is see, there's a one-time opportunity, okay, to resolve all pending litigation. If you look at the overall contour of the scheme, departmental appeal is 50%. Okay, if you have a favorable order in your case, again it's 50%. Loss to loss adjustment is possible. You carry forward, of course, a reduced loss number. So very important that at this stage the taxers evaluate things from a VSV perspective. You will have to do a pro and cons analysis. Also have to look at what are the, in case if the taxpayer does not opt for VSV, then what is the potential penalty implications in those cases in the future? If an appeal is pending at the tribunal and we don't opt for VSV and eventually we have to lose, then what's the probability of penalty? Because that will impact the decision making significantly. If the penalty chances are high, you rather resolve it at a VSV level. Now, cash flows would be impacted. As you know, taxes have to be paid by 30th of June. Businesses are impacted tremendously at this stage. Okay. Second is the carry forward of losses. In case of a loss to loss adjustment, the carry forward losses number would change. You'll have to look at what are the numbers of carry forward losses. MAT credit, similar thing. For even as for carry forward losses, similar thing for MAT credit. This is the best opportunity to get the rectifications done with the tax office. Okay. Lastly, this will also impact your financial reportings, deferred tax assets, the provisions, the tax provisions made, the contingent liability. All this will have to be looked at this stage. So I'm done with the presentation. So if you have any questions, happy to take it.
Hello everyone. Any
Sorry,
questions?
Pankaj, I can't hear you.
Hello. Yes, am I audible now, sir? Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes, sir. Any member who wants to ask, they can ask. They can unmute themselves and they can ask.
Hello, Atul Mehta here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, in one of my case, the department has issued notice for prosecution, against which we gone to High Court and taken a stay on the penalty order itself as well as the prosecution. So, can we go for VSV or no?
Sorry, Atul, your voice is breaking.
Should I type out this thing?
So, actually on prosecution, right?
Yeah, they had issued notice for prosecution.
Had they instituted prosecution? Had they filed it with the court?
No, they had not filed, because before they could file this thing, we had taken a stay at High Court.
So basically what they had done is they merely issued a notice?
Yes.
Okay, so this has been clarified by the CBDT. In the recent FAQ, which was just issued this week, I think on 22nd. Okay.
Yeah.
If merely a notice has been issued to the taxpayer, he can opt for VSV. Okay. Basically, where the assessee gets debarred is once it is instituted. Okay. Basically, once it is filed to the High Court. So in your case, it seems you can opt for VSV. You have a penalty appeal pending, then you can opt for or your merits appeal is done.
Penalty appeal is pending in the High Court. And this thing now, if the penalty amount has been fully paid, can I go for VSV and claim the refund also?
Yeah, you can go for VSV and claim the refund also, because 25% is the penalty amount. So you'll get a refund of 75%.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And what about the merits? That is over?
No, because the High Court has admitted the appeal. It may come up for
on
hearing.
Merits?
On merits, High Court has.
So if merits is pending, then why do you want to touch penalty? You resolve your merits matter, no?
No. Okay, you are talking about the quantum. No, in actually what had happened was that we had not gone in appeal in quantum, and
okay, you didn't get. Okay, understood. Then you'll have to resolve penalty. You don't have an option.
Yeah.
You because that's the only appeal which is pending. You resolve your penalty matter.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any
Hi,
other
Prashant.
questions?
Hi.
Yeah, this is Abhishek from Chembur. I have shared my query in the chat if it is open to you.
Okay, I'm just.
I want to know what is the practical examples of disputed interest.
So practical example of disputed interest would be 2011A. Okay, where for example there would have been a procedure being levied. Okay, under 2011A, that would be the practical example.
Okay. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Abhishek.
Yeah. So let us say my client has a pending tax appeal of 1,000, and we have appealed, and the appeal is pending at the CIT appeal level. And now they have also charged interest on the tax demand, and that
Which
will
is
amount.
that interest? 234B.
Yeah. So 234B interest is not disputed interest, right?
Correct. That will be waived once you
that will be waived, right?
appeal. Once you go in a quantum appeal, your interest 234B will be waived completely.
Okay. Yeah. So that is my point. So it is VSV turns out to be very effective for cases which are pending for 5 to 6 years, and you have a chance of maybe the decision going against you, because in that case you have to pay the tax, and the interest amount can also be a big one. So it's advisable
Correct.
to go
I
for
am with
VSV.
you. There are quite a few cases wherein it makes a lot of sense to go for VSV. If you're saying 5 to 6 years, if there are some old matters also, it makes sense to close it because your interest itself will be so high.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions by members, please? I guess there are no more queries, sir.
Okay.
I would like to thank you, sir, for your valuable time, sir. And I would request Shika Madam to give concluding remarks, sir. Over to you, Shika Madam.
Okay, thanks, Pankaj, and thank you, Prashant sir. It was a really nice presentation. You have clarified all the aspects with, examples and illustrations, which has made it very, point to point also. So I think all the queries are solved now and clear also. So I will request Mr. Dilip Punjabi sir, who is our past convener, to give word of thanks on behalf of our study circle members. Dilip sir, please. Pankaj, is Dilip sir mic is mute or unmute? Can you see?
Yeah, he's mute.
Just a second.
Okay, just a minute. So,
Dilip sir, hello.
I think his mic is mute. We have to request him to unmute it.
Yeah, sorry.
Dilip sir, please give word of thanks on behalf of our study circle members.
Yeah, sure. On behalf of the Chembur Study Circle, I thank CA Prashant Bhojwani for taking out his valuable time and sharing with us the finer aspects from on this topic of V2V, popularly known as V2V. I hope all the members who have attended this webinar had benefited from this lecture meeting, which was so very, very clear in terms of the scope of this scheme and the issues that may arise out of this. I thanks once again CA Prashant Bhojwani for his valuable time, in this busy season of webinars. And I request everyone to please carry it with a loud applaud. Thanks.
Thank you,
Prashant bhai.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
sir.
much, sir. Once again.
Thank you, Prashant sir. Thank you, Dilip sir. Thank you, all the members, for attending it. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Hello, Prashant sir.
Hello.
Hello, Prashant sir.
Hello, Prashant. Prashant, can you listen to me? Hello.
I can listen, sir. I guess Prashant sir is facing some
He's not
technical error.
online, I suppose.